All right, guys. Well, welcome to another episode of Divine Potential. Today, I've got my friend Kevin Walsh on the podcast. Welcome, bro.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on, man. Or thank you so much for having me on. I'm used to saying coming on because I actually have my own podcast. But man, I'm so excited to be on here, man.
Yeah.
You're such a great friend of mine, and it's been only a matter of time to get me on here.
Yeah, no, for real. We were talking about getting you on. When was this? This was about probably a month, 2 months ago that we got this set up, but finally here, man.
I know, man.
Anyways, so I guess getting back into Kevin's little bio. So Kevin's the TikTok's #1 sports and football content creator with nearly 900,000 followers and over 44 million likes. That number is absurd. But Kevin is not only a killer when it comes to content creation, but he's also the co-host of the Walk podcast, where he shares transformative stories of collegiate athletes and the impact of faith in their lives. And he's also a proud Columbus, Ohio native and a devout follower of Jesus, which is the coolest title for sure. Kevin's also passionate about spreading the gospel, inspiring others through sports and faith. So,
man, dude, that I've never really heard somebody read out the bio like that, man. And the Lord's really blessed me with all of those titles there, man. And as you said, like follower of Jesus Christ being #1, and
it's the coolest.
And it used to not be that for a long time ago. So it's been great. And yeah, totally, man. Like my #1 priority is sharing the good news of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And shining that light in everything I do. So, but yeah, man, not just a TikToker, not just a podcaster, but I'm a child of God.
Yeah, amen to that. So I want to kind of first start off we discussed this, but just like starting off like on the TikTok or just like the content creation side, just because that's, I guess, in the business world of things, that's kind of like what you're known as, right? What got you started in content creation?
Yeah, so
where did the journey begin? Let's go through that.
Yeah, from a young age, I was very much always interested in sports. That was kind of my thing. Big Raiders fan, big Buckeye fan. Loved the Cleveland Cavaliers growing up with LeBron James. And I always liked sports. And I remember in middle school, I started having this just desire to start like making photo edits and video edits from my favorite sports players. And so I remember having these Instagram accounts that I would make and just making like, trying to make an edit, like a photo edit of a player and try to get them to repost it on their Instagram. Like this was like the early days of Instagram. So I'm talking like 6th grade. And so that was kind of my first start. And in middle school, 7th grade, actually, I started up a Vine account. I don't really share about this too much, but I had a Vine account known as Sports Mixtape. And so I made little 6-second long like edits of like football plays and basketball plays, like big hits and just cool plays with kind of like where you have like the bass drop, like right when they catch the touchdown.
I've made a few of those, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of our age here, and so I did that in 7th grade. I remember I had like 20,000 followers or something on Vine when I had that account.
How old were you when you?
I was 7th grade, so I would have been like 13, 12, maybe 12, 11 or 12, maybe 12 years old.
You've never even shared that with between off camera, bro.
I have not shared that to you off camera. I figured the audience here deserves to know.
Yeah.
So I started with that, and I remember in 7th grade being like, man, dude, like, okay, like I'm the man. Like I kind of know what I'm doing. Like I remember people in 7th grade were like, "Whoa, Kevin's got," but I didn't really want the girls to know. Only like only the guys at the lunch table knew.
Yeah.
Only the guys at the lunch table knew about it.
Yeah.
So I did that in 7th grade, and I remember throughout high school, my buddy Brandon Eisenberger and I, we're trying to launch a podcast. It was called the BK Breakdown.
In high school, you guys were doing that too?
In high school, we were doing that. Yeah. So talking sports.
Yeah.
Talking sports and talking about a lot of NFL. That was kind of our main thing. So we would just talk about all the different sports, and it would kind of come and go, but I would, always I would make these setups, and like I made a little podcast setup, try to post these on YouTube, and it didn't go anywhere. But little did I know, kind of like how like the Lord was using all these experiences for me then to lead to what I'm doing now. And so was doing that throughout high school, and then in college, this is where things like really changed for me because freshman year of college, I am at Ohio State. So I go to Ohio State. I'm from Columbus. My parents are big Ohio. My parents both work at the university, and I always wanted to go to Ohio State. Only school I applied to, actually. So I'm in the dorms freshman year, and my buddy Brandon and I, we were like, okay, let's start up a fantasy football podcast once we got to college. And so we started a podcast known as Fantasy Freaks.
Fantasy Freaks.
And a lot of people would know this name because it was actually like the initial name of my TikTok account for a long time. So we started the podcast. We're just doing like audio only podcasts and just learning about how to talk about fantasy football. And then I was a big Gary V guy at the time. So Gary Vaynerchuk, you just maybe heard of him on social media, a really good marketing businessman.
Yeah,
and
incredible.
He kept talking about TikTok. And he was like, man, guys, there's a great opportunity on TikTok. And so I'm sitting here and I'm looking at TikTok and I'm like, I don't know about this. They're all just dancing, comedy videos. There's not a ton on sports. There wasn't a ton of people posting about sports on TikTok at the time. But I remember Gary Vee said something that really resonated with me. And it was that to really make it in the space, you got to be either the best at it or you got to be the first to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember being like, I looked up to like the fantasy footballers, some other podcasters, but I was always like, man, I don't think I'm gonna be the best at podcasting at the time. I just wasn't really that good at it. I didn't think I was gonna be a fantasy football podcaster.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, maybe I could just be the first to hop on TikTok when it comes to the sports space. So we started posting fantasy football videos on TikTok at the time, me and my buddy Brandon, and it ended up, our videos were horrible. I can't even go back and watch them, to be honest with you. But we were posting these videos and they were, they slowly, we started getting like these little hits. We're like, okay, wow, we just hit 10,000 views on a video. And then then we started hitting 10,000 more consistently. And then like a good video was 50,000. And so slowly over time, the Fantasy Freaks name, we were posting these fantasy videos and they were doing well. And then the big change was...
Were these faceless videos or were your faces in it?
My face was in them.
Okay.
Yep. So my face was in them. I was more so giving fantasy football advice at the time. And things really changed when we branched out to start posting just like NFL content, pretty much just about the players and fastest runs and the craziest NFL celebrations. And we were talking in the videos, and then that's when things really blew up. And so the Fantasy Freaks for a while, and then eventually Brandon and I kind of split ways with it, and it ended up just being under my name, Kevin Walsh. And it's really just shifted over time. It was NFL, and I was traveling to NFL games, and now I'm doing high school football stuff, and it's just been such a blessing.
Yeah, dude, I didn't realize how deep content creation like went for you. Like even like when we first talked about it, like you're like, yeah, I've been doing it for a few years, but like, dude, you've been a content creator since you've literally been in 7th grade, like since the Vine days. In a sense, like that's what it seems like. So, or I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, when you put it that way, it's like, yeah, I was a Viner.
Yeah, you were. You built a following of 20,000 people.
Yeah,
like and that is insane. Like think about like just like you kind of cracked the code at like such a young age. Like there's like, I mean, just a lot of people who like are aspiring to like grow a brand or whatever that looks like, and to figure that out at that young of an age is wild. So I didn't know that.
And I think the thing that when I look back on it now, I'm so grateful that I was just interested in doing something more outside of, just going to school and hanging out with my friends. I think there's just so much power in just being curious.
Yeah.
And being curious to try something new, and even though you suck at it. And at the time, like I said, I can't go back and even watch my own videos. I cringe looking at them, but when I do cringe at those, it makes me smile at the exact same time, because it makes me know that I'm getting better. Yeah. And so when I look back at the old videos and look back at my old self when I was younger and just trying to figure it all out, the skill sets that I have now and the place that the Lord has me is all because of the little moments that I was willing to just put in a little extra work and just be curious.
Yeah. No, another thing too is just like, dude, if you didn't start like, cause I have those cringy videos too, looking back, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that was so bad. But the thing is if you didn't have those moments, those super embarrassing moments, like you could kiss goodbye, like any sort of outcomes that you were looking for, like today. Right. So it's just, it's cool to just see out on the journey. So you got to fall on your face and you got to fail fast, I feel like, too.
It's the thing too. I remember with the TikTok phase that I was really feeling like, because I was like, man, I hope nobody sees what I'm posting. Like I was like, oh, like I'm in college, right? It's like kind of that phase where you're really trying to find your identity, and you're a freshman at school, and you're like, I don't really know a ton of people, and I'm meeting all these new. Like I'm like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm posting these videos on TikTok, and it's kind of embarrassing. But once you get over the fact that like, just understanding like, yeah, I suck. I'm not good. Like I'm not good, but at least I'm trying.
It's okay. Yeah.
I not to like over exaggerate a little bit, but just a little bit of that like man in the arena mentality, and just being like, okay, like I'm just gonna try, and I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody, but more so, if anybody feels some type of way about it, like that's on them, and I'm just gonna try and do my best, and It serves you well when you're willing to, put aside what everyone else is thinking and just be like, you know what, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I remember my first like video that I ever took, it was like a little like, because I love to work out. It was like a little like gym, like kind of like montage. And I literally remember like setting up like the tripod, and actually, no, this is what it started. I was at like the local Y, and I brought in my backpack. I was like, today's the day. Today's the day that I'm going to do this. And then I get in there. I got like scared. I was like, oh, there's too many people around. Like, people are going to think I'm weird, like all this stuff. And like, I remember like, so I was going to start off on the treadmill, sick video. And I didn't get out. I didn't pull out like the tripod. But then I like was walking on the treadmill. I was like, is this really what's going to stop me from doing this? Like the opinions of other people like thinking that I might be weird or whatever. So, but I got over that, and I went, grabbed the tripod and like set it up and recorded. But it was funny because after I did that, like it was so weird, so awkward. But I left that day like with that video, and I felt like so much freedom because I was like, I was scared of it, and but I overcame it, and yeah, that was the beginning of like my, I guess, video, which that was only like a couple years ago. So like not even super deep in the content creation stuff, but
well, I think when you even say only a couple of years ago, it's simply like no matter how old you are or where you are, it's like if you're a beginner, you're a beginner. And it made me think of like the spotlight effect is what you were saying there, because I think there's a different level. Like for me, when I first started making my videos, like I was still making them in the privacy of my own home, like in my basement. I'm filming these videos, and so nobody's like directly watching me. But I remember in my journey, like things really changed when I started going to NFL games, and I was vlogging the games. And so I'm like sitting here, like carrying a camera, filming myself, and I have tons of people looking at me. And I remember that was where I really like grew up and had to overcome some of that fear, because I had to get to the point where I'm like, I'm going to film myself and I don't care what anyone thinks. Now, fortunately at the time I already had somewhat of a following. So I was able to kind of like be like, oh, well, I like have some influence on social media. So like I can like feel confident in doing this. But pulling out a camera in public and filming yourself or people seeing it, and you're like, and you don't even feel like you have like a foundation to stand on. It's so difficult, but once you do it and you keep stacking those, like just overcoming that, then you're finally like, okay, I can do this.
Totally builds your confidence too. I think me and Pierce were talking about that on like the last episode, but it's just like, it's powerful, just like how like like the content, like putting stuff out there, it's uncomfortable, but it just like builds your confidence, which is so cool. But talking more about like, I guess like the practicalities of, because I mean, like we said or in the introduction, like almost 1 million followers on socials, like 44 million likes, like, so what is it like, if you could break that down, like is it post frequency, is it like what are some of the practical steps on like how you did that, or is it just like quality, like I don't know.
So the first thing that I would say is, at least looking back on my journey and what served me well, was in the early phases, you just got to post a ton. And what I mean by that is, it's not that you're giving yourself necessarily like, oh, that's better for the algorithm, or no, it's for you. It's for you, because when you post frequently early on, you're just simply not good enough. And so you need to actually just start putting things out there to get better, and to start being able to review what works and what doesn't work. Because let's just use like Mr. Beast as an example. Somebody posts, let's say every couple weeks or once a month or whatever. He makes these huge productions, and he wants to make a video so perfect. So he's all about quality over quantity. But he's at the point in his career journey, or in his creator journey, to where he knows what works. He is so good at what he does at this point that he's better off focusing on the quality over the quantity, because he's had so much history to look back on and to see what works. But in the early phases,
Quantity.
And you might have seen like early on, and he would post like every day, and he would just like, he was doing all these like random challenges to try to get some attention. But he was just trying to figure it out, So for me, early on, just posting as much as I could helped me really just fast forward through those early infancy, just not knowing what I'm doing. And then now I post once a week, like twice a week.
High quality.
But it's like higher quality. And so I can get away with it now. Don't get me wrong, like there could still be a benefit to posting, quantity with quality once you know what you're doing. But it does allow me to be able to put in a little bit more effort into each individual video to make it really good. So I think that's a big practical thing, is focusing on quantity over quality at the beginning. And the other thing I would say is everyone's going to say it, but you got to focus on that early. What are people seeing in those videos in the first, 5 seconds? That hook.
The hook.
And I know everyone's just like, yeah, focus on the hook. And you can tell somebody the hook matters, but it's like you make a good hook, but it's just like, what's a good hook? Like, how do I know how to make a good hook? And so for me, I'm at the point now where sometimes it becomes a little subconscious. Like I can just make a decent hook and not really have to think too hard about it. But if you ask me right now, like, oh, what would be something like you actually think about? A couple things as a checklist in my head that I would go through is I would say, you first got to think about when you say your hook, what is the audience that you're welcoming into this video? And so you don't want to exclude anybody, or you don't want to make somebody feel like, oh, this video is not for me. And so I'm trying to think of an example that I would give. An example I would give would maybe be at a high school football game, and I do a hook like, this is one of the worst football teams in the country. Okay, here's an example though, right? So I make videos in Ohio, and I cover Ohio games. If right from the jump, I just say, this is one of the worst football teams in the state of Ohio, right away, anybody who's in Indiana, anybody who's in Florida is like, oh, well, that doesn't really apply to me. But I keeping that open, keeping them guessing a little bit to be like, oh, like that could apply to me. Or if it was for you, Daniel, like even clipping a podcast clip, it would be like really showcasing, the solution, like the problem that people are facing, and having that problem be open to where it can reach a lot of people, and also credibility as well. So I remember you and I were talking about this a little bit. But it's like how do you format your clips to where the viewer who doesn't know who these people are instantly want to give you the credibility to want to listen to you. So there's a lot of things like that. And if anybody wants to DM me and just ask me for some tips, I'm down to just give you a little quick advice. If you're like, hey, send me a video and critique it. Like I'll critique you. You just gotta have some tough skin.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on, that's great. So, with the content creation, is it just you, or do you have a team like who helps you out do this stuff, or what's that look like?
So for the longest time, it was simply just me. And I still do all my own editing. I still, I feel like it's part of the story that I like to tell.
Can't let that go.
I can't let it go. But part of putting my own flair on it has been, keeping my hands on it.
Yeah.
Not to say that I wouldn't be able to hire somebody and train somebody to kind of see it the way that I see it. And so maybe that will come up here at some point. I definitely could. And you've told me I can.
Yeah.
So I probably will take that step. More so probably once I start making more content that I can't really handle the editing side of things, like to be able to get out there and go to more games and do more things like that. But I also have a videographer who rolls with me to all the high school football games that I go to cover. And so we make long form YouTube videos. And so it's been great having him on the team. His name's Nick. And
shout out Nick.
We went to high school together, and he's been a great companion to even have just on the trips because I was always praying on that for a long time. It can be lonely in the content journey for sure. Cause you're traveling by yourself, and you feel like when you're building up your personal brand as well, like nobody else cares. So you're like, oh, like I'm trying to build up the Kevin Walsh brand, but it feels like it's me against the world. Yeah. And so when you can have somebody kind of rolling with you, and who also is on that same vision,
it helps. Legitimizes it almost though too. It helps. I don't know, because I think about, for me, it's like, well, if someone's asking you like, well, what do you do for a living? You're just like, oh, I make content. Like, did you ever feel like, I don't know, because it's a new thing, right? And it's not like I'm a doctor. I'm not did you ever feel kind of looked down upon for that when you would say that?
100%. And if I got to the point where I really was telling people oh, this is what my following looks like, whatever, but no, people you like to have that one liner to just be like, oh, this is my job. And for people to just understand from the jump. I've always felt like my job has to be one that I explain a little bit deeper than just the one liner. So saying things like, oh, I'm a football content creator, or I make videos on social media, I'm always saying oh yeah, it's such a new age gig, and it's kind of surprising that I can make this my full-time job. Yeah. And I think for a while I was always like, oh man, I don't know, it's not even when you're talking like older people who maybe just don't get it,
They don't get it.
They don't get it. And so, but I am at the point now where I definitely am completely at peace in what I do and it being my job. And it really helps too when I have the approval from, the success that I've had and to know that, okay, like I am making a difference and making an impact and it's worthy of being my job.
Yeah, absolutely. So with it being your job, like obviously you got to make money from that. So like how does like making money as like a content creator, especially like in the sports phase, like what does that look like? Is it sponsorships? Is it like you promoting other people's stuff? Like what's that look like?
Yeah, so there's kind of, I would say 3 ways that people in the social media space can really make money. Like the main 3. The first one is getting paid directly from the platforms. And so some of them pay, some of them, like Instagram does not pay. TikTok pays on videos that are longer than a minute, viral videos that are longer than a minute. And what's it called? I don't really use X, to be honest, that much, so not really there. But Snapchat pays if you follow certain.
Do you use Snapchat?
I'm gonna get going here soon, probably. But I haven't been much of a Snapchatter. But a lot of these younger kids who watch my videos are big on Snapchat. So I might need to get my Snapchat game going. Yeah, exactly. And YouTube also pays people. Like people know, like plenty of people make full-time careers off of YouTube. But the YouTube game is tough to crack. It is because to get paid on YouTube, you can get paid when you get 5,000 views, but you're making $20 and it's like not, going to really change things for you. But, if you can be getting 20,000, 30,000 plus videos on a long form video, that can, at least for like 10-minute long videos or so, it can be a great way to supplement your income. But
I think I also saw you had like a brand, you did something with like Axe and then like Walmart. Was that like?
Yeah. So I've done, so that's the thing. So that's kind of like the first way you can make money is like just directly through the platforms. And then second would be working with different brands. And so doing brand deals. And that's been great. I have an agency, Snapback agency, shout out Snapback. My guy, Alex, he's been great for me. And he really presents me a lot of great opportunities to work with brands and a lot of fun ones too. It's a lot of times I get to travel and go to, like I got to go to the Super Bowl when I went with a brand with Wilson Football actually back in 2 years ago in Arizona. And that was a blast. And so there's just great opportunities that can come from working with brands because, they got the capital for sure.
Yeah.
And, it is important to partner with brands that, you align with. And there's definitely, like if it wasn't for me working with brands, I would not be able to do this full time. So I'm very, very grateful for those opportunities. And, but they are brands that aren't your own brands. So they do come at a cost.
You got to align with them for sure.
You got to align with them for sure. And you don't want to overdo them as well because you don't want to cast aside the audience that you already have. Yeah. And make them feel like you're over pitching to them.
So with like, is it more so like they're paying you like per view or is it like a flat rate? Like, hey, if you post this video, marketing our stuff, we'll pay you this amount of money.
So almost all the ones that I do are flat rates. Okay. So they pay me for the deliverables that I give them, that they give me. So they would say, okay, Kevin, we want you to make 2 videos for us or 1 video for us and we'll pay you this. And it's just that. Now, sometimes brands will want to do like affiliate deals with you, which would mean they say, hey, if you promote our product and you sell,
use code
Kevin and you'll get a cut of that. Yeah. And so the thing that I recommend for people in the content game is if you're going to do the affiliate route, you definitely want to feel very, very aligned with those brands because if it actually means getting conversions and that's how you get paid, it would need to be such an amazing fit to your audience. Otherwise, it just isn't worth doing those affiliates and promoting those. So that's another way you can do it is with the affiliates. And the last way that you can, obviously as a content creator, you see it with a lot of the big creators like Logan Paul with Prime and Lunchly and, launching your own brand or your own product or service to connect with your audience is one of the best ways that you can monetize. I still have not gotten to that point where I've really figured out what that is for me. Yeah. I'd love to
brainstorming?
I am trying to brainstorm.
What are we brainstorming?
What are we brainstorming?
Yeah, what do we think?
Well, I think there would be amazing opportunity for me I haven't really shared this to many people, so but I'm going to share it on here. All right. Because I like you, DK.
All right.
So with me covering a lot of the high school sports, I think there could be a good opportunity for me to launch a bigger production to be able to really revolutionize the way that media is done in the high school sports space. And so, and give it that new age feel. Yeah. And so I think that's something that I'm interested in building out possibly. I think there's, I've been other ideas like when it comes to the product side.
Sports cards.
Yeah. Like the product side for me is like really, the sports world's, a lot of it's like, the thing that's tricky about the sports world, it's a lot of gambling. It's a lot of, that's where a lot of the brand deal, like the big money brand deals come from. It's where like, I could probably make the most money. I could probably launch something in that space. But to me, it's not my thing. It's never been my thing. And also with a really younger audience too, it's just not the thing I like to promote. So the sports world's interesting though, because you operate under the umbrella of, if the NFL was to stop going tomorrow, like, it's hard to create a product underneath the NFL umbrella when they own, they own the whole infrastructure. And so it's been tough thinking. I've been trying to brainstorm ideas, but if I do launch something and try to build something that's outside of just my own personal brand, I want it to be a really, really good fit. So,
well, another thing you could do too is like consulting. Like, if you ever thought about that, like teaching other content creators, like how to make like a viral video, just things like that. So
that's totally, you're right. Like offering, like being paid to teach people what I know. And that's also a good idea too. So maybe I'll have to look into that.
But so I guess another thing too is I noticed a pretty big difference, like when I was going through your page, is like you went where it was just football only, and then you started to talk about your faith, talking about Jesus. So what was the shift in there? Why was that? It's a loaded question.
That's a big question.
It's a big question.
And we can get into it.
But we got time to get into it.
We got time to get into it, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
So there was definitely a shift, and it's because Jesus came into my life. And
come on!
And when Jesus comes into your life, man, he'll turn your world upside down.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what he does. So
he shakes it up, bro.
He shakes it up, and it's amazing that he does. Yes. And so yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of answer that question, I kind of gonna have to rewind back a little bit to just my life before I knew him, and then what changed.
You got me
once
smiling
I
over here, bro.
I know. So
please, let's yes, I want to hear more about it.
Let's lay it down. So I was doing all the social media content stuff that I was mentioning earlier, like just. It was great. It was great. And I was doing it all. And I when it comes to my faith, I didn't really grow up in the church much. Like I was kind of went on Christmas Eve kind of thing, but not raised in a Christian home or anything like that. And so I wasn't really around it much, and really never even thought about it, to be honest. Like, so throughout all of high school and all of college, like really, I never even questioned like, oh, what do I think about God? What do I think about Jesus? Like, it just never came up. Like, I don't know if I just wasn't really around people who talked about it. And I would also say too, I was definitely blind. Like maybe it was coming up, but I just couldn't see. And so I'm sitting here throughout all of college, and I was just finding like a lot of life in my relationship with my girlfriend. I was finding a lot of life in my social media following and in my friends, and also just from like approval from other people. Yeah. And so I always grew up, like everyone would always say like, Kevin, you're such a great guy. People always just talked me up as if I was just a really good dude and a really good person. And so I really found a lot of my worth in just being like, oh, like people think I'm a good dude. And so like, that's great. But people would constantly tell me that. And so it would just like give me that little like short-term hit just to like keep me going. Yep. And I never really knew why I acted that way or why I made certain decisions I did. And I was always like, oh man, I want to make people happy. I want to be nice to people. And I was just like, oh, just cause I'm supposed to, like, that's what our society says.
Yeah, I'm a good person.
I'm a good person. And everyone says like, treat people well and be a nice guy and love people. But at the same time, like, I'm still not doing that at all times. And I didn't even know why or what it was built on. So I'm going throughout all of college, and, I'm thinking I'm cool because I have the social media following, and I'm like, man, dude, like my life's good. Like my life's good. Like things are going well. And, but at the same time, like I still had my times where I was like, man, like I feel like I should feel so great about myself. But then still sometimes just being like, man, like it still doesn't satisfy me like as much as I thought it would. And I'm sitting here and I'm just like, man, I guess I just got to keep pushing, maybe once I make this much money, or like once I hit 1 million followers, which I still haven't even hit yet. I'm like, once I get there, like I'll be chilling, like, I'll be good. And so I went through all of college, not knowing the Lord. And I
But he was tugging on your heart, though.
He was
tugging on your heart.
He was tugging on my heart. So there were a few things that, right towards the end of my college, that I do remember having like these little things, little seeds planted in my life. And one was with Pierce Shao, who actually came on the podcast here.
Shout out Pierce. We love you, Pierce.
So Pierce went to high school with me, and he's always, I would say, man, he's crazy for Jesus. And that's like one of the best compliments I can give somebody.
Yeah.
And throughout college, I remember, I think it was my freshman or sophomore year, he was big into like self-improvement, and I was kind of getting into that too, reading like those Gary Vee books, and we just connected on Instagram over that. And I wasn't really close with Pierce back in high school. I wasn't really close. Like we were friendly with each other, but not really close. But we connected over like, oh, like you're trying to improve, I'm trying to improve. He saw what I was doing on my social media, so he was like, oh man, Kevin's like kind of like getting after it. And I was like, man, Pierce is kind of getting after it. And during COVID, he was out in LA, but he came home during COVID, and we started like getting coffee together and going on walks together and just kind of hanging out and talking about, self-improvement. Yeah. And I always just wanted, like, let's just talk about self-improvement. Let's talk about like,
Did you take your cold bath this morning?
Yeah, exactly. That's the stuff we're talking. Oh man, like I got my cold shower in today, of course. I jumped in there and that thing was freezing. Like that's what we're talking about.
It was cold.
But the thing that was always different about Pierce and I when we talk was like, he would always talk about, his faith in Jesus and how, that was a big thing in his life. And I saw the things he was achieving, and I'm like, man, there's something different about this guy. Like he's so loving, and everyone around me is like, man, Pierce is on something different. Like this guy is he's so loving, and he's got something that I just don't got.
Yeah.
And I always remember just looking at Pierce being like, man, but I thought his Jesus thing was just all like kind of cuckoo. I'm like, man, dude, like this, you're like, you just kind of are in this fairy tale land in your head, but hey man, it's working out for you. Like that's kind of where I was at with it. And for the longest time, so Pierce is kind of doing that. I remember one time I had a conversation with him, and he was achieving some amazing running goals. And I asked him, I was like, hey man, how do you like get through that? How do you get through like 100-mile race? Yeah. And he was like, I just talk to Jesus. I just tell him to heal me and give me strength and to keep me going. And I'm like, what's this dude saying right now? Like, what this dude's just saying that he's like, what do you mean he asked Jesus to heal him?
Yeah. I'm
like, what do you mean this guy heals you? Like, dude, you're out here running a race. Like, no, dude, it's just that you're built different and like you're that guy. Yeah. Like, that's what I'm thinking about. And
dude, pride will totally shut your eyes off to the supernatural.
Totally will shut your eyes. And so I'm thinking, man, like, no, Pierce is just like, he's just a different type of specimen, but he's telling me, oh no, Jesus heals me like during my runs. And like, he keeps me going. And it was enough to where like I was just asking him some follow-up questions, and I thought I was asking them just to like be like a nice guy. Like I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like show Pierce that I'm like interested in, this whole Jesus thing in some ways, just to like be courteous to him. And I remember feeling that in my heart. And the next time I saw Pierce, he gave me this little book, a book from his pastor, and it was like a 30-day read thing that about just really I actually don't even know what the title of the book was, because I brought it home that night, and I remember even coming home to my roommates being like,
you're like, oh, Pierce, thank you so much, man, for this book.
I was like, thank you, dude. And I came home, and I remember having this book, and I was like, man, I remember even like saying to my roommates, I was like, oh yeah, he gave me this book. Like he's kind of like pushing this thing on me, like, but I got in bed that night, and I was like, well, like I respect Pierce like enough to where like, I'm at least going to like try to read it. Like I'm going to try to read it. And so I hop in bed that night, and I'm trying to read it, and I'm like, this makes no sense. It made no sense to me at the jump. And so I was like, this makes no sense. And I'm just so I just put it next to my bed and just kind of put it on the floor next to my bed. And it literally sat there, and I never touched it ever since then. But it was just sitting there, and I'm just like, man, didn't make sense to me. At the time, I still was just, things hadn't clicked yet for me. But I still set it next to my bed. And I didn't like throw it in the closet. I didn't, put it in the trash can.
Hide it away, yeah.
It was still right in the open. Yeah. And probably 7 months went by, and this is where things like really changed for me. And my brother called me. I remember sitting at my desk. This was, kind of in that summer right before I was right after I graduated, right before I was moving out. And my brother called me, and he was just like, hey man, what do you think about God? Like, what do you think about the idea of God or that there could be like a higher power? And And I have respect for my brother to the point where, if he's going to ask me that question, I'm going to hear him out, and I'm going to be willing to talk to him about it. And but again, like I'd said, I really hadn't ever had conversations about it. And my brother and I literally were just on the phone for hours and just talking about like, what could it make sense that there could be a higher power out there? Could it make sense that there's a God who created everything and who was kind of watching over me? That was just kind of my viewpoint on it. And over like a few phone calls, like throughout like a couple weeks, I was kind of like, man, like, wait, I'm actually like starting to think like there might be something greater out there than what I think there is.
What happened to make you think that?
What happened was I remember really questioning why I believe what I currently believe and why I do what I currently do. And so the big thing for me, and it was more of like a heady thing for me that kind of changed things, was I was like, why do I think certain things are good and why do I think certain things are bad? And I'm like, okay, I think it's nice to, hold the door open for somebody, or I think it's nice to, give somebody a hug.
Yeah.
Or, but why do I think it's bad for me to go up to Daniel Kelly right now and punch him across the face?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why do I think those things are good and why do I think those things are bad? Yeah. And I really couldn't come to an answer other than just being like, well, that's just like how it is. Mm-hmm. And then I got to the point where like, maybe there's something written on my heart that tells me certain things are good and certain things are bad.
Yes.
And it was enough for me to be like, there might be something to this. And I also was thinking, let's say there's a God out there. Why would I want to live a life that I don't believe there's something greater than just what I can see, hear, and like touch and feel like here on earth? Because I came to the conclusion that if there's nothing greater out there, then what's the meaning to anything?
Yeah, what's the point of all this?
And so even if you told me, well, if someone just had the straight fact, like there's not a God, or at least someone was telling me, I don't think there is God, I'd be like, well, even if there wasn't, why would I want to believe that there isn't? Mm-hmm. Because if that's the case, then my life is left meaningless and there's no reason to wake up tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that was enough for me. My brother and I, we were talking, and my brother was going through kind of a lower point. He had people pouring into his life, pouring Jesus into his life. Amen. So we ended up starting going to church together.
So you guys both started this journey at like the same time.
Same time. Yeah. God is good. Amen. And so we started this journey at the same time, and we started going to church together. And at this time, I didn't even know, I didn't know much about Jesus. Like I was just like, okay, I think there's a God, and I think there's a God out there that, it's just a higher power. But I was like, I don't know what this means. So I started going to church with my brother, and my girlfriend was going with us too at the time. And we were, just going to church, and I'm like, man, look at all these people out here just like praising this God,
putting their hands up. They look weird.
They look weird, but they really believe in what they're praising.
Yeah.
And as the weeks went by, I started hearing more about Jesus and what he did for me, and how really my sinful nature got revealed to me is what it was. Because at the time, I told you, like I was blameless. I was blameless. I always thought I was just a good dude, and I would have been the last guy to be like, man, I'm a sinner and I fall short. Because I just would have looked at the guy next to me and been like, well, I'm better than that guy. I'm better than that guy. And so, but Jesus really revealed to me, like, man, like, wait, I am a sinner and I'm in need of a savior. And then I learned more. I started getting into a Bible, which actually, when I told Pierce that I started believing God, he instantly sent me a Bible, and I started diving into Genesis. And
it's a tough place to start.
It is a tough place to start, but I think it was actually a great place for me to start because I really liked, Genesis chapter 1 and just like hearing about how the earth got created.
The most beautiful story there is. I'm going through Genesis right now, but
it's so beautiful. And when you read it, you start to realize, like, I actually read it for the first time being like, wait, I actually believe, like when I'm reading this, like I believe like, oh yeah, like God did say, let there be light. And that's how light came to be. And so, but I saw it and I was like, wait, like how is this actually resonating with me? And so that's when I kind of knew, like, wait, like the Lord's actually doing, like something's changing in my heart here. Cause this used to look like gibberish to me. And now it's hitting different. Mm-hmm. And so I get into Genesis. Pierce sends me a Bible. I'm going to church and my sinful nature is getting revealed. And, I got to the point where I'm just like, you know what, man, I'm going to accept that Jesus, he died for me and he paid the price for me, and that he rose from the grave 3 days later, and that I could have eternal life with him if I just put my belief in him and trust him and surrender myself to him. So that's what I did. And ever since then, man, my life's been turned upside down. And It's been a pruning process for sure.
Yeah.
Because one thing is like you come to Jesus and you can hit this wave where you're like, I see the world so differently.
Yes.
And
Yeah. It's that Holy Spirit.
it's that Holy Spirit. But not to say that it doesn't come with its difficulties too.
For sure.
And so for me, that meant, a lot of, when I say pruning, just having to change a lot of the ways in my life. And the Lord helped me with that. He really gave me the courage. And
He'll
gave me the
change your
strength.
desires.
He'll change my desires. And so he did right away. And there's certain things, that take longer for your desires to be changed. And there's certain things that, are faster. But yeah, hit me with the word.
I gotta pull this out real quick. Where is it? Oh man, I'm trying to find it. Oh, where is it? Where's Ezekiel?
I still haven't read Ezekiel, so you're gonna hit me with some good stuff.
Oh yeah, here we go. Because this just like it hits so. I'm probably gonna have to edit out this part like while I'm looking for it, but dude, that's so good, so freaking good. Let's see. Too bad I didn't have this pulled up to begin with. Here we go. We're coming to it. Here we go. Ezekiel 36:25. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws.
Dude, that it's so good to put some scripture to it because that's exactly what happened to me. And I remember the Lord just took certain things away from me. Like he right away, I was like, man, I talk differently. I don't speak the way I used to speak.
Yeah.
And the way I carry myself, it's just so different. And I don't desire the things that I have invested in. Some of those things, and then some of those things are a process, right?
For sure.
Where he changes those. He really works on your heart over time. And and there's totally there's ways that I was living that I was like, man, dude, I got to stop living this way. And and some of the most difficult things in my life. And we can get into them too if you want.
I would love to if you're comfortable with that.
I think we should. So, but just because I think there's two parts to my journey with Jesus, and it was first the surrender to him, and then a lot of it's actually walking out your faith and being obedient to him. Amen. Because you really grow in your faith when you follow the conviction that he's putting on your heart.
Yes.
Because he wants you to choose him and not choose your old ways. And it's so hard because I was so used to living for me. And as soon as he's like, no, you got to do this for me, that's when you start getting in your head and you're like, man, wait, who do I really follow? Is it and it's difficult. It's really hard. And
especially when you're young and you're growing this following over social media, business is booming. Things look great from the outside, but when you're experiencing so much turmoil on the inside, that's prompting. It's just, you need someone, you need something, you need Jesus.
You do. And, at the time I was in a long-term relationship since high school with my girlfriend. And I was just graduating college when I was kind of starting to, get to the Lord. And I moved in with my girlfriend in July of, what would have been, this is about a year and a half, maybe a little over a year ago, close to a year and a half. And we were just it was good. We've been dating for so long. It made total sense. We were like, oh, it makes sense. We're to move in together. And, and I was a big proponent of that. I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. We've been dating for so long. We got to take the next step in our journey. And the Lord had other plans when it came to, what I thought was the right choice. And don't get me wrong, man, I very much, appreciated all that I, got out of that. And,
Yes.
But so I moved in but then the Lord was like, oh, he rescued me, from.
He started convicting you.
He started convicting me. Cause right.
Yeah.
I get to know the Lord as I'm, I found Christ when I was, once I was already living with my girlfriend and it was tough because, I didn't have conviction on it for a while and, it was fine. And it was great, really. And then, the Lord really started changing my heart to be like, man, I don't know if this is right for me to be living with her. And it was one of the hardest things for me to ever
you love this girl.
I love this girl. She's an amazing woman. Yeah. And I'm like, man, this girl's so amazing. I love her to death. And she's been my rock since, and I care about her so much. But it started being like, man, the first thing was like, man, it feels weird that, sleeping with her and, and I'm like, It's so tough because, and don't get me wrong, like I see the fruits that come from a marriage, and I see like
Yes.
why, why the Lord makes that so honoring in a
Yes.
marriage. And so, but I started realizing like, I don't know if it's the right time for this right now. And, but it's so hard because, you're sitting here and you're like, well, I do enjoy it, but also like, you're caring about the other person's feelings, and you don't want to give it up. And so the Lord really like, he gave me the courage and the strength to make a change there. And then, time went by, and then I ended up moving back home, here in Columbus.
Before we
And
move on to that, I just want to pause because like that is the biggest, like that's so big right there. If you guys didn't catch that, but like you were in your conviction and you listened to it and you acted and you were obedient. Like so many people, like the Spirit is like prompting them, like, hey, don't be doing that, don't be doing that. And like they get convicted from it and they sit in it and they just keep doing it over and over like a dog back to their vomit, They just sit in that, the shame or whatever that looks like. But you listen to that conviction, you listen to the Spirit, and that's like what really will either propel or, cause you to, stay where you're at, like in your faith walk. So
it was difficult too, because there were
cool.
some moments where like the Lord really brought me to my knees, and I was really crying out to him because I was just saying like, Lord, I don't want this. Like, this is not what I want. Like, can it not be this way?
Yeah.
And
you got to make a decision. You're either going to love Jesus more, or you're going to love the situation you're in more.
Yeah. And the Lord started, showing me that like the loving thing to do would be to follow him, out of respect for, my partner, and out of, and for him and everything involved. Like that was a loving thing to do. But every part of me didn't want to. But if it wasn't for Jesus and having him in my life, I would have never had the strength to do it.
Well, you wouldn't have even known.
I wouldn't even have known. And let alone, I really just would have never done it. And so I just remember, and when I sit here and say like, oh, I did it, it's like the Lord did it.
Yes.
Because he made things easier. Like he made it happen ultimately. Yeah. And so I don't sit here and be like, man, I'm so obedient. No, it's like the Lord really like just made it happen, and I just followed him.
Yeah.
And so move out, and I'm living at home, and it's just but I definitely felt like this peace, I'm feeling this peace that I'm like, man, like actually like, things were still difficult when it came to, the relationship and things like that. But I did have a peace knowing that like I wasn't living. I didn't have this like weight that I was carrying, that I felt like I was carrying before.
Guilt.
And so, I think that's some encouragement that I would give some people is if you are feeling maybe a little bit of that conviction or that weight, it's worth following Jesus and following that conviction, because you'll be released from that weight. Yes. And then, even though it can be difficult at the start.
Yeah. Pierce gave an incredible analogy last week. I'm just going to tell it to you. But it's like, basically the way he describes it is like there's a man, or well, just Jesus say, like he's got like he's like asking, it's Jesus and this little girl. And he's like basically telling like this little girl has this teddy bear, and Jesus is like, give it to me. And then behind his back, he has like a bigger teddy bear. So it's like giving the things to Jesus, like those things that you're carrying, whatever those addictions, anything, because once you surrender it over to him, like he's got something so much greater on the backside, that bigger teddy bear for you. So,
and I've seen that.
Yeah.
And I also like one of the Bible verses that just stands out to me the most, of just like that I'm constantly reminded of his goodness is, it's a popular one, but it's one I love. It's John 13:7. So you may not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. And that one's always so great for me, because it's one that when I find myself in a valley or a time I'm really struggling, it gives me hope, because in a time like that where I'm like, man, I really don't know what you're doing right now. I don't really understand what you're doing right now. But I can have a hope and a peace knowing that later I will know. But then also on the backside, when I look back at, things that I've seen the Lord do, and I know, now that I understand, it builds my faith up even more, because I can look back and be like, I do understand now, and he delivered on that.
Yes.
even though I didn't know then. And so all that verse does on both, the time when I'm in the valley or the time when maybe I'm out and I can look back and reflect, both sides of it, I can look back and be like, man, the Lord's will is greater than mine. And even when I don't know or don't understand, I will understand.
Yes.
And I will be forever grateful for him and what he did. So
Yeah. No, and I think too, I forget who I was talking to the other day, but a lot of times the people, the problem that people have with like religion or just like God is like believing in an authority figure that's greater than you, that knows more than you. And like, cause well, especially I think back to, just since we're talking about like your stories, just like, I'm the one who like built this following. I'm the one who did all this stuff. And like to surrender that. And like, yes, you did. Like, don't get me wrong. Like this is I actually heard something the other day. It's just like we are able, like we control like our decisions, the inputs, but God takes care of the outputs. Like he controls the outcomes. So like you can like taking like, like what's the word? Being very just being very intentional with like every single decision you make on a day-to-day basis. Like you have no clue what those decisions are gonna like stack up to, like what outcomes. Like you could have like one image of like what the outcome could look like, but God could either like it could look so much greater than that or it could look like so much less. So, like we really don't know, but I don't really know where I was going with that.
well,
But
I think something I want to add to that too is like even just like thinking about my story and being obedient to the convictions that the Lord was putting on me. I want to like really just add on to that and just say that it's really important to remember that there's so much grace from the Lord and in all that. So, because a lot of the things that I was doing like were not honoring to the Lord and not honoring to the people in my life, and I would feel bad about that and be like, man, I suck. The fact that I did this to somebody, or the fact that I was doing this to the Lord, and like I don't want to do that to Him.
yeah,
But the Lord has so much forgiveness for us. And so I'm not going to carry that weight.
Nope.
And so even when I share it now, it's because I'm free from that weight, because I'm just accepting the grace from the Lord that I don't deserve.
Mm-mm.
I don't deserve one
Not at
bit,
all.
but He's a graceful God. And so there's so much freedom in that.
We should talk about, there's like one thing that I was, just this study that, well, I'm doing this one study. It's just like understanding more about like who God is, like his character, like what he said, like who he is, but like also what he has to say about like us, right? Like it's more of like just like an identity study. But through that, it's just like there's a big difference between knowing like about God, but then knowing of God, like his presence and like his character and like have you ever thought about that? Like the way I look at like knowing about God is like, yeah, the scriptures, the stories, but when something is from God, like knowing of him, right?
Yeah. And because I think you can dive into the Word, right? And you can learn more about God and like who He is. And it makes it very clear. Like you can see in the stories, like, oh, His character a little bit, which is always great.
Yes.
Like it's great to get to know His character and who He is and how He sees us.
Yes.
And also, there's a lot of scripture too in the New Testament that literally just straight up just says like, this is who God is. Like,
yes.
And it's not even like a story. It's just like saying like, no, like this is God. Like He is holy and He is set apart and He loves you and all of that. Now, I think when it comes to the side of actually knowing Him, not about Him, a lot of it just comes from our personal experience in our relationship with Him. And so it's really like, for me, one thing I personally do that really is a great reminder is in my notes on my phone, I just have it's my pinned note and it just says, praise God. And anytime that I have a moment that I just see God very clearly and His hand on something, I just add a bullet point.
Ooh, I call that you're building an altar, because that's actually, that goes back to there's like, I do not know what where it's at in the Old Testament, but at Rock City we did there's a series on it, but basically it's like every single time you see the faithfulness of God, you're building an altar so you can look back on like in these times, like just because like it's a journey, and it's like sometimes it's super easy to forget like all the incredible things God has done. So that's really good. I think I might have to start doing that.
It's so easy to forget because we're just constantly like, especially here in this American culture, man, like we're always looking forward, man. We're always like, what's next? What's next? What's next? So we don't even and we're always asking God for the next thing for him to
Yes.
bless us with. And you're like, God, will you do this for me? Will you change this in my life? Will you, change my heart in this? And don't get me wrong, like the Lord, like he's gonna be there, and he's gonna be with you through that. But being able to look back and reflect on all of the things that he's done, and we'll forget about him, dude. It just shows who we are, man, as the sinful beings we are, that are just so, we're just, honestly, what I think about is like, we suck.
Yeah,
We
literally.
suck. And I forget about all the things that God does and all the amazing things he blesses me with. And those might, like, the things that I write down might be more of like moments that like I really just see God and see like his faithfulness.
Yes.
But there also can just be times where you're just like thinking about, man, like, Lord, I'm just thankful for having a conversation right now with a great friend,
Yeah.
and for you to just to be blessing me with that, and great community. It doesn't have to be necessarily a moment, but even just be blessing for, like, even the material things that we have, like like this water that I get to drink right now, like that he provides. And so, but there are moments where I'm like, man, God, you were so abundantly clear right there, and I know that's from you.
Yeah.
That's knowing him.
That is, and I feel like sometimes it can be, I mean, the more time you spend with him, like the more, like, I guess, aware you are of like when something comes from him. But like sometimes discerning, like, is this from God, or is this like I don't know, a potential like hazard that's gonna trip me up. I don't know. Just like, I think that just comes with time though. It's just like looking into that. I don't know, trying to navigate that. That's like one thing I'm trying to navigate.
It does, and I think you really got to dive inward a lot when you have those things, because a good reminder that I always tell myself is, one thing I'll find myself doing is I might want to take some action on something, and I have to look at it real deeply, and I'm like, wait, I'm actually kind of doing this out of fear right now. I'm like, that's not who God is. He's not a God of fear. Like he's not gonna make me move by fear. He never will do that. And so when I see that, I'm like, man, okay, I'm actually like doing this because I'm kind of scared about a certain outcome. I'm scared about something. It's like, well, I don't know if that's of God. I don't know if he would make me move that way. Like he's going to draw me somewhere because I see him in something, right? I see his goodness and taking me a certain direction. And so that's one thing that I kind of do, is just really try to think about, like, what is this emotional feeling? Because there are, like, there are the fruits of the spirit, and then there's also, the things that are definitely not from the Lord and from the enemy.
Yeah.
So really looking, but it is difficult, because there's times where you're like, man, I don't know. And maybe that's time you really just got to spend more time in prayer and take some more time on it.
For sure.
And also, it's great to have great brothers and sisters in Christ that you can lean on to help guide you through that.
Amen. Yeah, that's community. Community's so big and so important. Just because I remember, like, the one of the greatest, like, I guess, tools that I don't know, just was changing like the circles that I was in, and I had to do that to, like, one, just strengthen my relationship with God, but that was like really, that was the kicker. It was just like because like the cliche thing, like you're the average of the 5 people we hang around, but like, yeah, it is. I mean, there's so much truth in that. So what are some things that I guess you had to lay down in your life that or some things that you just had to like cut off to really, I guess, like blossom in your relationship with God?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one for me, and it's still a struggle for me every day, is it's the seeking approval from others, just because I found so much life in it.
Yes.
And so when you talk about cutting off that, it's, where do I check myself on, am I following Jesus, or am I doing this just because it's the expectation from people around me or what people want? So I mean, one can be, who you used to be and people knowing you for who you used to be, and me having to really cut off, like, okay, Kevin, like, no, like, this is who you are now, and being bold in who you are now.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. It's so difficult because, you find yourself around, people who knew you for who you used to be. And so when you're around those people, and who are, people that I love and people that I care for and people I want to be around.
Yes.
But it's just important that I am who I am around them.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be who I used to be.
Yes.
And it's like, who I am now can still, be in those rooms and still, still love on them and still be a great friend and be somebody who cares about them. And, but at the same time, it needs to be that, but not sacrificing who I am in Christ.
Yeah. I think, well, one of my friends, like, I guess like when I first like started this like journey of walking with the Lord, there was like a time, like I was still like so fresh into it, like, just like building like my disciplines and just like really like my roots just like growing. There was like a time where I was like thinking about like going down and like visiting people back at like college, like the college that I went to, and he was just like advising me. He's like, I just think it's, looking back on it now, I'm like so glad that he told me this, but because I think you need to go through like a season of like just like disconnecting from that previous life, but to allow your roots to grow deeper, but then like not forgetting it though, because now like, you've gone under so much, like God's done so much work in your life, then being able to like go back in that place and now be the light in the room and be like an example of like who Jesus is and what he can do.
Yeah, and it means, and what comes with that faith too is being able to be in those rooms and not fall into the temptations that come with it. And so, and the temptations to fall back into who you used to be, and too, but we're also called too to like, you don't have to participate in everything, like
No.
and that means like it's not like, oh, like I need to be around these people and I need to that I'm gonna do the exact same things they're doing,
No.
and just no, it's like no, like I'm gonna do what I want to do. And if people want to come along with that, then like, great. You know, like I always think about, for me, like going out, like isn't kind of my thing anymore. Like it used to be, but I don't go out anymore. And, that's just something the Lord really changed in my heart. And so don't get me wrong, like people go out and that's totally fine. And, go out and do your thing. But, if you want to hang out, we'll hang out, but I might invite you, like, hey, let's go grab some lunch. Or like, let's go play some golf. Or like, let's do something that, I want to do. And if somebody just wants nothing to do with that, then like, that's okay. But like, if I'm only friends because we go out together, then like, I'm probably not your guy. But maybe at some point though, like, I'm not going to sacrifice on the things that, that I want to do just to be in a certain room. But
no, small vices kill big dreams. I've heard that. And I mean, or just even like, not even kill big dreams, but just the small vices can destroy you.
I do want to talk a little bit about how coming to Christ changed things for me when it came to my content though. Cause I remember we were talking about that.
Oh yeah.
And I want to hit that, make sure we get back to that. And so when I came to Christ, I was really struggling with, what my content should look like moving forward. And because I was sitting here, I was like, man, I used to make all these videos for the wrong reasons, right? I was trying to be as famous as I could, trying to go as viral as I could just because I wanted that was just going to satisfy me. And I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. And so once I came to Christ, I was like, wait, like, am I still doing this for the right reasons? Like, it doesn't really like, I was just trying to be like the NFL guy. And I'm like, I'm not the NFL guy. I don't want to be looked at as just the NFL guy. And I got to the point with the Lord where I was like, it took me some time. I remember this in like, Marchish time. I remember even talking to Pierce, my buddy Pierce, and just being like, man, dude, I might just need to give up this content creation stuff. And Pierce is kind of speaking into me. He's like, hey man, like, I think the Lord really, blessed you with, the influence that he's given you. Even if you didn't think it was of him then, now that like that was still, the Lord still had his hand on that.
Yes.
And he can use it. He can use it for so much moving forward. And so I got to the point where I just really brought it to the Lord, and I was like, Lord, if you just don't want me to do any content creation stuff, you just want me to pick up some random job I've never heard of and totally change it up, like, I guess I'll do that. And It was at that point when everything changed for me in my content journey, because it was at that point where once I surrendered it to him, I was finally giving him something to work with. And I was really just praying. I'm like, all right, Lord, like, I don't know what this is going to turn into, but like, I'm going to keep going with this, but like, I'd love to find ways to incorporate my faith into my content. And I'd love for it to like turn into something that, I'm really proud of and fulfilled by making. Cause I wasn't really finding a ton of fulfillment in what I was making before then. Like Did
you start to experience a little bit of like burnout maybe?
A little bit of burnout. Yeah. Like with all the travel, I was going to a primetime NFL game every week.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is you have everybody telling you like, man, you got the best job in the world. Like you travel to an NFL game every week and you get to, and I'm like, yeah, like don't get me wrong. Like it sounds cool, but when you go to an NFL game every week for 2 straight years and you're going by yourself and you're making the same old video every time, it gets old and it gets sick. And even though to most people it'd be like a dream to go to an NFL game every week, And I'm not saying that like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not grateful for that. Cause it really taught me so much and was a great experience. But I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm getting a little burnout from this and I don't know what it looks like moving forward. So I started praying. I'm like, man, Lord, if I could just like get involved with some like athletes who are sharing about their faith and like use my platform to like build that up in some ways. And
Yes.
a little inside story. This kind of gets into everything I'm doing right now. This is just honestly
Yes.
like Jesus' goodness. And so I was praying on, Lord, I would love to be able to work and do something with Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
And because he was starting to be so much outward about his faith. So this is the Ohio State running back. He was being really outward about his faith. And I was praying like a few days before something happened. I was like, man, Lord, I would love to be able to like use my platform to do something with Travion Henderson. And because I knew there'd be kind of be alignment because I make football videos and he's super out about his faith.
Yes.
So like maybe there'd be a good connection there. And I kid you not, 3 days later, I look on Instagram and I see an Instagram post that says, Walk by Faith event, Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, G. Scott, 3 of the biggest Ohio State players, are putting on an event at Upper Arlington High School to share about their testimonies. And for those people who don't know, I went to Upper Arlington High School.
Go Bears.
Go Bears. Exactly. And so that's where I went to school. And I'm like, wait, Lord, I was just praying on this. And you're going to put on an event at my old high school where these guys are simply just sharing their testimonies to a crowd of people. I'm like, I got to be there.
It wouldn't make sense if you weren't.
Wouldn't make sense. So I reached out to the Walk Foundation, and I was like, this was the first event they were putting on, and I was like, hey, I would love to be here and just like cover this event. I was like, I've never done something like I'd never covered on my phone like an event like that before. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and I was like, okay, I just want to show up, and they're like, yeah, you can show up, like just do what you want to do, and I show up and I make a video, and video gets like 300, 400,000 views, and I'm like, what is going on here, Lord? Like I'd show up and you this video reaches 300, like 50 people gave their life to Christ at that event. And it really was just a super encouraging event for Christians and other people and people who don't know the Lord being like, what's going on here? Like, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so I went to that, and then I went to, that kind of led into me being more involved with the Walk Foundation and going to a lot more of their football camps throughout the summer. And I'm making videos at all these events that are getting hundreds of thousands of views. And it's like, Lord, like, this is crazy. Like this is exactly what I was praying on.
Yeah.
Like, I'm literally making videos about, you know, my faith and these players' faith and football. It's a perfect alignment. And so I was doing that throughout the summer. And, you know, the big kind of heavy hitter was when I went to the Ohio State campus revival event that was on campus.
Dude, that was when me and you first like officially met.
It was. That was the first time I ever ran into you. Was actually at that event, and I was like, I've heard of you. Yeah. We need to talk more.
Yes, dude, that was wow.
And so I went to that event, and I kid you not, I originally actually wasn't supposed to be there. I was out of town. I was going to be out of town in Florida for a high school football game, and a couple days before, I was like, you know what? Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be there. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be at this event. I mean, I don't know. I've been covering these players talking about their faith all summer. Why would I not be at this event? And so last minute, I changed my flight to get back that day, like the day it was on a Sunday night. I got back like Sunday afternoon from Florida, and I changed my flight, and I got back, and I didn't even know what to expect. And I showed up to this event. There's a huge campus revival event going on where all these players are sharing about their faith. There's worship music, and there ended up being a ton of baptisms.
That was
like
so cool.
60 baptisms
that
or
was
so.
Incredible.
And the event was incredible. And I was just there documenting it the same way I had been doing all summer, that the Lord was giving me those skills throughout the entire summer. And I'm at this event, I make this video, post it on social media, and this thing goes insanely viral. It goes to probably like 20 to 25 million people across platforms. And that's like the biggest video I've ever posted. And it is a pure testament to God and his goodness.
Wow. Dude, I guess one thing that came to mind when you were sharing that, what just sounds, I mean, like these are the types of videos that have like gotten like the most traction. It's like, dude, there's such a hunger in this generation and just like in this like climate right now. You see a lot of people turn into like, you know, like new age spiritual, just people, just like everyone's got like a God-sized hole in their heart. You know, we've heard that. And it's just, that's literally a testament to just like what is going on, is because people are just curious. They're just like, what? Like a revival? We haven't heard about that since Billy Graham in the 60s and 70s. But that was literally like my next question. That like teed up perfectly. It was just talking about like documenting the walk, but and then just now flowing into RWC, Run with Christ, the Run Club, and just like what's going on in Columbus is so special right now.
It really is. I think like we've seen Columbus has been just being changed by God so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting to me because I look back on it like growing up and I'm like, or even in college, and I'm like, I don't think this stuff was going on. I guess I could have just been blind, but it just feels like there's something going on here in Columbus that is more people are coming to Christ and there's community being built up that I just feel like hasn't been here before like it is now. And
for sure. I feel like we're all too, it's just like, dude, it's become like such like, I don't know, I feel like my community and like my just like my network of people is just like grown. Like I used to like pray a lot about like God just like bring in like some like healthy like relationships and friendships and like because I went through like a period where like I really wasn't hanging out with like anybody. Like I was in isolation for a while, and I remember just like praying about that because I just felt like I didn't have anybody, like nobody to hang out with, nobody to like nobody that was really checking in on me or anything like that. And it's just like the way like God like delivered on that prayer is just like now it's gotten to the point sometimes where it's like, all right, like I'm a little too social now, but it's like, but it's still like it's a blessing though. It's a great thing. So
and if I know you well, Daniel, it's like you get invited to anything, man. You're there. You're there. And you get in a flow too, where you're like, oh, we're having fun. Like we're hanging out with friends. Let's keep going.
We're about to kick it up.
And sometimes I remember even Daniel will ask me like, you'll be like, yo, Kev, you coming? And I'm like most of the time I like want to be there, but I'm like, like if I can't, I'll be there if I can. But sometimes I'm like, I got this work, and you're like, yeah, I know, you got to get that done.
Yeah.
But I'm the same way though, where like, man, when the community that's being built here is so strong and the people are so amazing, that it's so hard to not want to just continue to pour into those relationships, just because they're so good. And being from Columbus and growing up here, all it is doing is confirming just how much I love this city, and how much I want to continue to pour into and build up this city. And I have no desires to take off and be anywhere else. And this has been my home, and it will continue to be my home. And I don't foresee a time that it won't be. But if the Lord calls me elsewhere, He does. But I love Columbus and I love Ohio, and that might be a hot take, but I like it.
Hot take, clip it. No, that's dude, that's incredible too. Just because like I feel like when we're like when our parents were growing up, it's kind of like the UA people hung out with the UA people, pal. Like, but it's just like, dude, we have so many friends and like genuine connections like all over the city, and just like even now with just like the the Ohio State team, like mutual friend like Travion, just like incredible people. And it's just and I don't know, just going back on the Walk podcast too, it's just like you have such like you're in like such like a close proximity of just hearing everything that like the faithfulness of God, and just that's so cool to see. So
and like the Walk podcast has been great too, because for those people who don't know, like I get to interview a different Ohio State football player every week to share about their faith. And it's the podcast series known as Buckeye Revival right now that we're doing. And it's been such a blessing from the Lord, because these players have so many great stories to share. Their testimonies are so strong. And with how much influence these players have, being Ohio State football players, and the brand that comes with that, and the following they have here in the city, it's so cool to just see a platform being given to them. And the Walk Foundation has been such a blessing, and for me to be able to be a part of it truly is awesome. And so sitting in on those conversations and just seeing even how God's moving on the Ohio State football team, I can see how they're moving on the football team. I see how they're moving in the Run with Christ Run Club here in Columbus, and how churches like even Rock City are having 700 baptisms.
Crazy.
And it's like, what's going on here? And it's like, I can't explain it other than God. So it's been cool to be in on that. And I, am definitely kind of have my hand on a few different things right now, but I'm just kind of being obedient to the Lord, and He's really opened up a lot of opportunity and doors for me right now, and I'm just kind of running with those, and being able to be surrounded by all of like God's goodness and all these things that He has His hand on is pretty cool.
Well, I guess kind of just like wrapping up, what do you think is next for you in terms of like content creation, social media, like your journey? Like what's that vision? I know you talked about the high school creating kind of like a production for high school. I always told you, I was like, man, I could see you being like a broadcaster on like ESPN or something like that, but I don't know if that's what you want though.
I know a lot of people always say like, yeah, man, I could see you calling NFL games. And
Yeah.
it would be cool. It hasn't necessarily been something that I've been like, oh, that would be, a path that I'm going to start taking the step towards now. But who knows, maybe if there was a time down the line where I could, more so fast track into a role like that when I get my skills a lot better and become more well-spoken and more in the industry, that would be an amazing opportunity. But right now, I would say,
you literally have just as much experience though as like some of those guys. Like, I mean, if you've been in content creation since 7th grade.
yeah, but I probably would need to like start calling games.
Yeah, that's true.
At maybe more like the high school, like low collegiate level, and maybe I could do that. But I have found though that it's been amazing to be able to interact with the communities and being more like, on the not necessarily like calling a game is a little bit more like, okay, I'm sitting back calling a game, but I've really enjoyed like interacting with, so like with the high school games, like it's been so fun to be able to be a part of like the student sections and having conversations with people from random small towns and communities. Like I've been able to travel to, small town Ohio, like Marion Local is a school out in the west side of Ohio, just a small farm town. And, just covering their football culture on a Friday night and getting to know and talking with these parents and these kids where, football Friday night is just everything to them. Yeah. And there's so much community behind it, and to be able to go out and shed light on those towns and those communities and bring, the excitement to the players and the students, it's so fun for me to do. And so I've really just found that when it comes to like the next steps or what's next for me, I've just been so fulfilled from, being a part of these high school football games and getting to be there, experiencing them and getting to have these conversations with the students and cover the games where the athletes are super excited, just bringing some life to Ohio high school football. And the whole state's getting behind. Like I have kids DMing me 24/7, come to our game. And, kids are chanting my name at these games. And it's like, oh, like Lord, God's so good. And, and that's one of my prayers I have to very much check myself on is like, Lord, how can I, really reflect you, and how can I decrease at these games and how can you increase? Because, although he might be using me to be at these games and make an impact, it's not about me.
No.
And so it's been great and really just like pouring into the Ohio high school, community. And so I would say next is like, I'm excited. I mean, I haven't really talked about it with anybody yet, but like, I'm going to roll it straight into the basketball season.
Yeah.
I haven't really been I've mainly been a football guy, but I've realized that my videos are about storytelling and community, and they're not about the sport itself.
Dude, high school basketball is actually going to be really cool to watch.
Yeah,
actually.
So when it's chilly outside, I'll be in the gyms this winter. So be ready for some high school basketball content, and then we'll see where the summer takes us. But it's gonna be such a blessing, and just continuing to just build those relationships and just bring some joy to high schoolers and also adults who just something so positive about looking back on like a football Friday night, or everyone just has good thoughts and just seeing community and people coming together. Because social media can be littered with a lot of things, man, that just distract you and make you upset and angry. And I just want to spread some joy on there and be a light and really just entertain people in a good way. So that's about it.
Well, praise God, man. This is where can people find you at? Instagram, TikTok, what's that look like?
Yeah, so if you just search up Kevin Walsh on pretty much any of the platforms, I should come up. But my username does not have an I in the Kevin, so it's Kevn Walsh, and so no I in there. Couldn't quite get that username, but yeah, look me up on there and check it out. And, check out the YouTube videos too. Really trying to grow in the YouTube long form space. If you want to get to know me a little better, check out those YouTube long form videos where I travel around to different schools around Ohio. Yeah,
well, dude, I appreciate you being here, your vulnerability. This has just been an incredible conversation, seriously. So just grateful to have you as one of my good friends. And so guys, that is another episode of Divine Potential. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode here soon. Peace.